Welcome back. This is Sunday. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the private contractors will finance the upgrading of the meter gauge railway from Naivasha to Malaba border at a cost of 21 billion shillings in what has been termed as a private-public partnership that will save or will help the government avoid more borrowing. There will also be a railway connection between Naivasha, between the SGR and the MGR. And Kenyans have been asking, should the MGR, the old railway line, have been upgraded from Mombasa to Naivasha in the first place? Those are some of the questions we want to delve into. Let me start with you, Dismas. What does that say about this SGR, which is the Jubilee government's biggest infrastructure project? The fact that it will end at Naivasha, as far as we know so far, because the MGR will be upgraded. What does it say about that?
Well, it confirms several things. That number one, SGR is a white elephant. That the people behind the conceptualization, they got everything wrong, right from the feasibility studies to the mathematics, even to the communication aspects of it. Because when you look at the figures are just insane. Because you understand, during the last financial year, they were able to make earnings of 10.2 billion, while the operating cost is 12 billion Kenyan shillings. And the amount of money you're supposed to be repaying every year is 20 billion. So it doesn't seem to make economic sense.
Right.
And we are told that there are special cartels and special purpose vehicle who are part of the SGR deal, not because they wanted to make the cost of doing business any easy or moving cargo from point A to point B, but because they wanted to line their pockets. For instance, ask yourself, how come all of a sudden the land along SGR became too expensive? We are told there are people within the system who were able to make money because, they bought land and then later on they rewarded themselves.
Right.
Then there's the little matter that is hidden somewhere, either maybe within Treasury or State House, of the SGR contract. Who has information about that deal? Who knows the nitty-gritties? And in my view, we need to set up a commission of inquiry to establish pertinent facts around SGR. Because it looks like something that is going to be a disaster for us for a very long time. If we are able to do the commission of inquiry, then people will be forced to deliver the contract on the table for all Kenyans to see. We need to understand what are the collaterals behind SGR. And we need to know who are the beneficiaries. Who are these guys who are stealing from the state, who made money through dubious land deals, or even supplying material at exaggerated cost. Now, if you give that kind of information to Strathmore Business School, they'll come up with a good document which will be able to assist us in future on how not to do business. Right now, according to Capital Economics, a research firm from the UK, they tell us on average it's 50% more expensive transporting cargo using SGR. And if you're a trader, you are actually being forced to use SGR. Basic economics dictates that every individual runs with selfish interest. So you place SGR on the table, place the MGR on the table, place even water or even road, and let the individual businessman or entrepreneur go to SGR because it makes business sense. Do not force Kenyans to use SGR when it's 50% more expensive. And depending on where your pin is located, you would be a resident of Taita Taveta and you want to pick your cargo from Mombasa. But the cargo will come all the way to Nairobi. So you have to come to Nairobi, pick out your cargo, and then move it back. What is the logic of doing that kind of business? And believe me, if you speak with people knowledgeable about this business, they said long time ago, there was no need of having SGR.
Right.
You would have just simply upgraded the existing infrastructure and make a business case. And then number two, how did our deal makers, obviously who are making deals for their own pockets and not morale, how did they imagine they can put these big infrastructure projects without President Museveni, without President Kagame, and without President Nkurunziza?
Right.
How do you start talking to President Museveni when the train has literally left the station? These are the people you're supposed to engage with right from the word go. And this goes back to economic diplomacy. You remember, say, you had an altercation with the PS for Foreign Affairs. This is where we expect economic diplomacy to be at the main front.
Right.
You cannot be doing this kind of project alone from Nairobi. It doesn't work.
So this, obviously, from what economics are saying, doesn't make sense if it is in Kenya. No wonder it made a 10 billion shilling loss in the first year. So who is to blame? Is it China? And I know you have a deep understanding of this. Is it China? Is it China who duped us into getting this, or is it us who did not do our feasibility studies very well. And now Chinese are saying, look, this thing is not making sense. And now we have to do this Mai Mahiu connection and this upgrading of the MGR.
Well, but I think it's difficult to say who is to blame, because I think all of us have contributed to some extent to the space. Let me just finish. What I'm saying, when I say all of us, we voted for a government that negotiated that. We
no
actually just gave them the mandate. We've never questioned electoral justice. When people were in the streets, we did not sustain that. But let me say this, that if you look at the mathematics that Dismas is giving, it's making a lot of sense. That if you want to use SGR merely as a transport, infrastructure to transport goods from wherever and land in Naivasha, clear your goods and sell in the market, then you're missing the point, because then you're not going to break even. We are not. Because SGR is not supposed to be a conduit for bringing goods in Kenya. We are not in the business of importing. We cannot be building industries in other countries. So we need to redefine the conversation and ask ourselves, how then do we make SGR a conduit for our export businesses? How do we make SGR help our agriculturalists and agricultural businesses in Kenya? And that's a conversation for another day. Now that we are here, we need to ask ourselves, what is the role that the government played in putting us in this situation, and how have the Chinese reacted? And from where I sit, if it is true that the government of Kenya went to look for more loans to extend the SGR to Kisumu and eventually to Malaba and probably to Uganda and Central Africa, parts of DRC, and they failed, then China is speaking to us. It's basically telling us that it's not going to be business as usual unless you guys have a straightforward, transparent, and well-structured fiscal reporting mechanism that will tell us, this is the amount of money that you got as loan, this is how you've made use of it, and this is how it is benefiting the local people. We're not going to add you a lot of money. We're not going to add you any loan. Look at it this way. The same forum where Kenyans are saying that we were denied an additional loan, Ethiopia had their loan waived. Studies have shown, studies in 40 loans that have been advanced by the People's Republic of China have analyzed 40 loans in 24 countries, and they've realized that there is nowhere in these 40 cases where asset seizures has been the case. There is this narrative of weaponized loans, debt traps. I mean, it doesn't hold water. Kenyans...
But those contracts are very open-ended. It doesn't say that our port of Mombasa is protected. It doesn't say our Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is protected.
And you see, the fact that the Auditor General and all the other state agencies have never come to confirm or disconfirm this information means that there is actually a problem. And what I'm saying is very simple, that when we were fighting for nationhood, the enemy was without. When we got independence, the enemy was without. Why do we keep fighting the enemy who is outside, even when we have independence? We've had independence, we've had second liberation.
So who are you saying is to blame?
The key is we need to start asking ourselves that it is Kenyans. It is us Kenyans. Right. It is the people we have in power, that some of these things are procurement-driven land projects meant to plunder. Right. And unless we start interrogating that, holding our government accountable, China has already given us a signal that it's not going to be business as usual. And of course, they have this non-interference. By not advancing, they're actually letting us know that in other countries, we are refinancing. In other countries, we are waiving debt. Okay. In other countries, we are actually forgiving debts. But in your country, there is a problem. And I think it is incumbent upon the government to come back and restructure its financial policies, because it looks like Kenya is getting loans that they cannot handle. Okay.
Jerotich, over 300 billion Kenya shillings used for the standard gauge railway. And now we're being told we're going to need the old railway line anyway for this big mega project to make any economic sense. So Kenyans are asking, should we have just upgraded it all the way from Mombasa to Malaba?
Well, obviously, we couldn't upgrade it from Mombasa to Malaba because the Chinese said no during the begging safaris, as far as we know, because we don't have any clear information back. But I would like to just reflect on the lightning swift speed with which CS Macharia went ahead to tell us that they found private sector financing for this MGR from all the way to Malaba from Naivasha, plus the work to connect the SGR to the MGR. You have to ask yourself a question. When was this private sector firm identified? Who are they? Who is behind it? We know very well how Kenya Railways, for example, was dismembered in order to give TransCentury a foothold into the industry. This 21 billion shillings, who is going to pay it back? How will this private sector company recoup its investment and even the profit that it needs to make? I foresee a stripping and auctioning of our assets. This is a typical standard story behind the story. So these 21 billion shillings, you can already consider it as good as gone, especially since we do not know who the people are behind this financing. And as I understand it, at the end of the day, the government of Kenya is ultimately supporting and allowing an international group of con men and con women to siphon funds out of the country. For me, it's about capital flight. It's about money laundering. At the end of the day, who is behind the 21 billion shillings? It's like the dams. It's like all the other dud projects that we have in Kenya at the moment. You have this big project, the money leaves the country, it's gone, it's sanitized. And you know that the people behind the people always link back to the country. And for that reason, I agree with Hesbon on the front that it is the government that has allowed for us to be where we are today. I refuse the victim blaming of Kenyans, because not all Kenyans voted for this particular regime. And even when you voted or did not vote, there was electoral injustice that has never been resolved.
Right.
The servers have never been opened.
So let me be the devil's advocate.
And I just wanted
James Macharia says, as you respond to it, that this private-public partnership will be faster. That is his major reason for this deal.
Well, faster, not faster. Where's due process? Where's the procurement procedure? Where's the contract? Open the contract so that we can understand. And if this was faster, why the begging safaris? Why look for hundreds of billions of shillings when an MGR would have just as easily sufficed? So as far as I'm concerned, there's mischief afoot, and there's malice aforethought in terms of my money as a taxpayer. At the end of the day, I'm footing the bill for the 21 billion along with the 327 billion that went into the SGR that all economists and experts and specialists on the matter have told us is hopelessly unviable. So for me, what I see is that the Chinese as a government have seen that the government of Kenya is hopelessly corrupt, and they have exploited that loophole. They have come in and they have said, here, have as much money as you like. But eventually, even the Chinese are seeing return on investment is quite iffy and low, because the money has gone. All of it is disappearing as we speak, and we are indebting our great-grandchildren. So at some point, even the Chinese say, hey guys, you got to be a little bit accountable. I find it hypocritical ultimately, because that means the Chinese government did not do its diligence and saw the fact that we wanted money, or the politicians or those kickback money laundering types wanted the money, and they gave us the money. So it's a little bit hypocritical to wake up now and refuse to give us the money. But thank you, because it could have been another 400 billion or another 300 billion. So now we are only losing 21 billion, but still CS Macharia should open that contract. Who is this company?
All right. Kipchumba, 15 billion from Naivasha to Malaba, 6 billion, that connector thing from in Maimahiu. This seems to have come out of the blues for many Kenyans. What do you say about, what is your take on that?
I will, first of all, Ben, it is unfortunate that we are having the right discussion at the wrong time. Before we even started building the SGR, this was the discussion that we needed to have, the pros and cons of the MGR and SGR, so that we know we are a poor country. As we invest in this, which one can give us value for our money? Right. Now, the question that we ask is the swift and that lightning speed, the lesser beam focus on us having this thing, means that this was a plan B. We went to China to what Jerotich calls the begging safaris. When they could not deliver anything, we came for a plan B. But the question that we must ask ourselves as Kenyans is this: for how long will we allow the kickback-driven procurement to block reasoning? We need to ask ourselves, whereas the SGR is the fastest mode, but its cost in this country is just out of exorbitant, and we have not been shown the return on investment. Nobody is telling us if you invest this amount, it will take you 100 years. Even when we discuss the upgrading of the MGR, we need to ask ourselves, where are the designs? What will be the speed? Where is the contract? And I invite CS Macharia to Article 35, Subarticle 3. where he needs to know that he's holding a public office. He's not running a parastatal whereby the government owns 50% and some private individuals own the other percentage. We, the Kenyans, the sovereigns, require and must know the information in those contracts, because it is you and I who will be taxed at the end of the day. There is nothing that is so secretive about a contract that involves money. What is there? There is no arms in those contracts. We do not have boots or bombs being bought by government or grenades.
Right.
All we have are just metals, designs, and what have you. And if indeed they are true and they mean well for the country, why don't we parade them even in national archives there for every Kenyan who is interested, or any idle man who can read English, to go there and see it?
Right.
We are told that most of these contracts, the arbitration, the seat of arbitration is in Beijing. That is being unfair to the country.
All right. Dismas, you've had very strong words about the men who are in charge of Uhuru Kenyatta's policies, his cabinet. James Macharia has been in charge of, is in charge of this upgrading of the MGR, has been in charge of the so-called Project Simba, the JKIA deal with KQ, the bus rapid transport system, which Kenyans have been punching holes in. What is your take on his track record, his performance as transport minister?
Well, maybe let's just go to China for a few minutes. And there is no way President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta would have left Nairobi for Beijing to go for a brainstorming session. When Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta left Nairobi for Beijing, as Owila would confirm, he knew the outcome of the meeting. He knew the outcome of the meeting. I mean, he had gone through the documents and everything. He knew for a fact he was not going to get any coin for the SGR. Because earlier on, the Chinese had said that you need to do a feasibility study.
Yes.
Never mind that the one which was done probably in Mandarin is not available for public consumption. So when CS Macharia comes and he says that they are going to look for private resources, believe you me, that was not plan B. It had now been elevated to a plan A. So he knew everything about it. And it goes back to the disaster in communications. They needed to have told us that we are going to China to get resources for other projects, not SGR. And in the absence of these communications, people now are erroneously saying that President Kenyatta did not get a deal in China. Yeah. And I'm holding no brief for KZN, as you may realize. But you know, there was that lapse in communication. Then number two, Raila Odinga was not part of President Kenyatta's delegation. He did not have any formal meeting with President Kenyatta in China. Raila Odinga was in China in his capacity as a representative of an amorphous body called Africa Union. So he was representing African Union interest. So again, for peddlers of fake news and alternative facts to say that this deal, that the two dropped the ball, that's erroneous. But the biggest...
You have information that we don't have. That they don't,
of course, you know where he sits.
in the same jet.
No, where he sits, and you know, as a Duke of Mososho, people give me information and I speak to diplomats and businessmen. These are people whose word you can take to the bank, including HSBC, and make nice withdrawals.
But the former Prime Minister did say in Kisumu, speaking in the Luo, that we are going to China to ABC and D. So
if you start trusting a politician's word, then you'll be in a lot of trouble. You remember he was making political statements to fellas in Sondu, which is even the reason why he did not speak in English nor Swahili. Okay. Because he spoke in his mother tongue. When you tell him to say the same in English, he can twist it. But in my view, CS Macharia, for the longest time possible, he has refused to accept that he is no longer a private sector person. Is a CS who represents a national interest. And he's got the highest number of principal secretaries working under him. So he must embrace public participation. Any project you are doing, if it's going to serve Kenyans' interest, the public must be consulted. You do not wake up one day in the morning and say, I'm not going to allow this kind of traffic to the CBD. How does he expect us to get to the CBD? Has he done any consultation? Has he spoken to subject matter experts? Has this idea been taken to our representatives in the National Assembly or the Senate? And in my view, that has been the biggest failure of majority of the people serving in this cabinet. They think public participation is just a wish list in the Constitution. It's not.
Taking it from there, how much of all this we're talking about, the SGR and MGR and the mess that it has become, how much of it is due to incompetence by the policy makers that Uhuru has entrusted, to do these deals and to do this work and projects?
Well, Ben, I would say that to some extent you could talk about incompetence. But I think to a large extent it's not about incompetence. It's about a system that self-regenerates, a corrupt system, because all this is about us losing money. And you cannot fire people if you're losing money, if the next person is coming and you're still going to lose money. So it's a structural thing. And just to correct something that probably people don't know, SGR is not even a Kenyan project. SGR is a flagship Belt and Road Initiative project. And the SGR in Kenya is an anchor project, which means China has a lot of interest in SGR than Kenya. And the fact that they've withdrew their support to the extension of SGR speaks a lot about our structures and how our structures self-regenerate this corruption. And I think it is upon the president, he is serving his last term, to deal with that. That if you're going to deal with the biggest issue I think that we have today is the revenue that we are collecting and the amount of money that we're using to service this revenue, because it is at 33%. So 33% of what we get, we are paying loans. So we only have 70% to deal with for recurrent expenditure and other things. And that is not sustainable. And for us to deal with that, we have to deal with corruption. And for us to reduce that percentage, we have to invest. And there is no way we'll keep investing if the structures do not support return for investment.
Please don't allow Esbon to commit murder. He has said these are Chinese projects funded by Kenyans. So is it a Chinese project
you see,
if it's funded by Kenyans?
Let me just explain.
Should the Chinese then be funding the project A to Z?
It is a Chinese project globally. So the SGR in Kenya is just part of the Belt and Road Initiative that intends to connect 3 continents. That is Africa, Europe, and Asia. So China has a lot of interest in having resources channeled to Kenyans to help Kenya build the infrastructure. And Kenya, just like any other African country, suffers from infrastructural deficit. So we are building into a global thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. And the fact that it is just in Kenya that we have a problem, you know, where they are losing interest in that connection means that...
But they have a right to lose interest in something that we are actually paying for. And Uganda is very reluctant to...
This is the thing. We are paying for it. And there are 2 things that happen. We pay for it for the interconnection. That interconnection is not going to help Kenya alone. It's going to help Kenya and help China. So they have an interest to that extent. And then number 2, they're helping us bridge our infrastructural deficit. But the issue is, to what extent is that money adding value to the locals? And that is what China is questioning. And we should stop looking outside. We should start looking inside. Why is it that we have a structure that does not help us develop capital infrastructure?
All right. Your teachers disagree?
China is not altruistic. I'm sorry. They're not looking to see how this corruption on the part of the government of Kenya is affecting my pocket. Because at the end of the day, even when they said we are not extending additional funds to you, we still have to pay the 327 billion. China doesn't care by hook or by crook. And because this contract is kept top secret, we can only speculate. And even the controversial 1 million Chinese coming in, really, at the end of the day, China is in for itself and China is enjoying and benefiting. Around incompetence, it is my great surprise that Macharia is still in office, that Keter, for that matter, because you look at Ketraco and its role in all of these actions, even around the SGR, Ketraco, so Keter, Macharia are still in, and Rotich for that matter. Why hasn't the president taken action? Because if we want to say, oh, the president is not bad, it's the people around him who are making bad deals, then he should get rid of those people. It does not mean that they're criminally culpable, but they are seen and perceived to have acted outside the interest. Exactly.
Right.
So for me, at the end of the day, I really believe that there is always a deal behind the deal. There's always money to be made. And that is where I take the buck back to the government and the corrupt operators within, who are then forcing me into penury for the rest of my life.
Chumba, in 1 minute only, is there any way out of this mess that this country is in?
2 points to be made. 1, corruption succeeds itself. We are a country whereby corruption, the corrupt succeed the corrupt, and we move on. But going back to the MGR, SGR, away from the whining and the complaints we have made, it is a good interconnectivity measure where we are now. It is also a good stopgap measure, although we must address the issues of now, the speed, because the SGR has a higher speed, the MGR will be low. And then the other thing we must be told is, as we open this region, which industries does the government intend to build so that we are not only importing even matchsticks from China, transporting them to Eldoret. We are doing something so that we do we balance our balance of trade with China or whichever country is better, because as you have noticed, Ben, we are losing jobs. Companies are closing, companies are moving to Uganda of late and Rwanda. We are doing nothing about it. We are interested in building SGR to carry what? To carry humans. There is no money in carrying people.
There are deals
SGR.
like the export of frozen avocados to
But
China.
those ones
40%
are
of
those
it.
ones are
Is that
used-
good enough, or is it
no,
absorbing your-
Ben, at times we need to be honest with this economy. You cannot use 100 million to buy a truck to be transporting goats. Transport them with a wheelbarrow.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that. Let's keep the conversation going. And the hashtag is Inside Politics on Twitter. Let's take a quick commercial break here on the broadcast. When we come back, we'll get into more politics inside the majority Jubilee Party. A rally inside or in the cradle of Mount Kenya politics, the county of Murang'a, that was set